Women's NCAA basketball is heating up because it seems like there's something always in the news this week. We've got the fabulous freshman from Rutgers, Kiyomi McMiller. Now, she was one of the top recruits. I believe ESPN had her ranked 22 in the country when she came out of high school. She's from Maryland, from the DMV area, but she went to high school to one of the academies here in Burlington, New Jersey, South New Jersey. And she ended up staying in the state, going to Rutgers, right? You all know who she is. You all know that move that she did. Let me see if I can find it. Broke somebody's ankle. She did this in the game the other day. Hold on. Yeah, that's she does that spin move. That right there. That move right there, that's what got her recruited. When you got somebody with the profile like that going to a mid-major like Rutgers, everybody knows who Rutgers is, but Rutgers ain't winning no championships. So Kiyomi Miller, she had a fast start. She had the one move that went viral. So everybody was talking about her. Here's where it gets a little dicey because I don't know what happened. But her minutes start to go down. Clearly, she's going to be upset. She played 40 minutes, then it dropped to 26, then it dropped to 24. And I'm sure she probably had some words, or maybe her parents had some words. Because this interview, what you're seeing right here on the screen, that was an interview when she was still in high school on Angela Yee's podcast. So if you big enough and you bad enough to where you getting on with Angela Yee and you doing media promotions, you're a pretty big deal. When you're doing that, maybe a little ego comes with it. But in any case, if you look at her stats on ESPN, and this is after the game that they set her down, she's still averaging 19 points a game. She's still the highest scorer on the team. I think the next closest got like 17, averaging 17 points a game. So she's the top scorer on the team, at least based on what I can see. And when you play for somebody like Rutgers, you are always looking to see how you measure up. And obviously, when they go play USC, you try to measure up with the best in the country, Juju Watkins, and that's the game they sat her down. Now, the most important thing you have on this earth is your time. So when you miss that matchup, you missing how you measure up to one of the best players in the league. And I'm sure she was ready to D her up and all of that kind of stuff. So I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened in practice. I don't know what led to this. Maybe it was a steady buildup. When you sit your best player against a team like USC, that's a huge measuring stick, and that's saying a lot. So clearly there must have been some trouble. When the coach was asked about it, this is what she said. This is the head coach for Rutgers.
Well, the thing with Kiyomi is, we're going to keep it internal. Some coaching is not just about what happens on the court on game day. It's about how we impact these young women that are in our program in all aspects, from their character to their growth into womanhood, into their decision making. And so, I see my role as a coach as being more than X's and O's and wins and losses, but how am I impacting the young women in my care?
So when they asked her about it, she said she's going to keep it internal. That makes sense. Keep family business in the family. However, and this is one thing I see a lot of coaches, men and women's sports, doesn't matter, football, baseball, basketball, a lot of coaches are struggling with this because of NIL. Now, she was one of the top recruited kids in the country. I'm going to assume she had a pretty good NIL deal to go to Rutgers, because I'm going to guess that she has some other offers out there, but she chose Rutgers. So you're not a student athlete no more. And I think this is the transition that coaches are trying to get used to, because for so long, it was the NCAA running things, and they weren't fair. The coaches could jump ship at any moment, and then the kids would be left hanging in the dust. Kids would commit to go to a college because of a particular coach, and then that coach would jump ship before that kid ever played a game. So it was never fair, and this is the flip side of that coin. Now that we have NIL, and this is something that these coaches have to come to grips with. These are not amateur athletes anymore. They never were. And you got these kids bringing in a lot of money because people are coming to see these kids play, especially with the advent of social media and how active these kids are on social media. They're bringing in revenue. Some of these kids got hundreds of thousands and millions of followers on their TikTok and Instagram and stuff like that. That is translating into hard ticket sales. You got 100,000 people on your Instagram page. If you can get 10% of that to come to a game, if you got close to 1 million on one of these social media platforms, if you got 1 million followers and you can get 1% of that to come to a game, and your arena only fits 15,000, or whatever the situation is, the bottom line is the social media influence is driving ticket sales. Don't get it twisted. These schools are making money from that. And again, like I've just mentioned, there's some ego that comes with that. So the girl made a move in a game. It went viral. Everybody was talking about it. Maybe she got a little bit too full of herself. But you decide as the coach, and maybe rightfully so, you decide to sit this girl, this freshman, you decide to sit her against arguably the best player in the country. So you have denied this young player an opportunity to see how she measures up. And the fact that she said, we're going to keep this in-house, something had to transpire, probably some type of maybe disrespectful conversation, comments, something like that. But the one thing that these coaches can't forget now these kids have leverage because they can, and that's exactly what this young lady did. Kiyomi McMiller, she went on her Twitter feed and she apologized to her fans that her coach sat her and it wasn't her decision. It was a coaching decision. So she put her the whole coaching staff on blast. Obviously, it was directed to the head coach, but she put everybody on blast. Not my decision. And you hearing the coach's answer, and you're like, I understand where you're coming from, but that's an old school way of coaching it. Old school is not even the right term because that's still the right way to coach. You don't let the players run the team. But again, these aren't amateur athletes anymore. That's the transition that coaches got to get to. So they got to advance and evolve to the next level of coaching. You got to figure out when you dealing with paid players, you got to figure out how to handle that ego and get the best product on the floor. That's your job as a coach. Now, I understand what she was saying and trying to usher in and raise and mentor young women. I understand that, but you have to, that's an X factor now because you're dealing with paid athletes. And sometimes some of that stuff is going to have to fall by the wayside because I agree with her decision because something must have been off. You don't sit your best player for no reason. So something must have happened. Some type of conversation, a comment, something must have happened. You just don't do that on a hum. I didn't like your crossover, so I'm sitting you. And you the top scorer on the team, that doesn't make sense. So let's just assume something happened. But when you sit your best player and your team gets dropped by 50 and the whole world is watching, everybody's watching Juju Watkins. So they watching everybody they play. So every time you play a USC or a Notre Dame or a UCLA or a UConn, when Rutgers get those opportunities, the world is watching. That's a recruiting tool. That's a recruiting video right there. If they play a particular team close, that is a recruiting mechanism for that school. The NIL business is going to get a little spicy in the next few years because these coaches have to figure out how to deal with these athletes because they are not amateur anymore. And they have to come to grips with that, period. Now, these coaches can fall off. It's been happening in football a lot. Coaches don't want to, I can't do this no more. I'm going to bow out, all of that type of stuff. Nick Saban caught a lot of heat when he walked away from football because he didn't want to do with the new landscape and the NIL and all of that kind of stuff. But the flip side of that is people kind of looking at him with the arched eyebrow because now, like, oh, now you walk away because Alabama can't get all of the best athletes. anymore. Because now you got some of these smaller schools that can pay the money and get those 5-star athletes and even the playing field a little bit. And again, I blame that squarely on the NCAA. But this is what you're going to get, situations like this. And it is up to these coaches, because now that's in your job description. It's up to these coaches to figure out a way to deal with these egos and these young kids with this money. That's just the reality of the era that we are living in, especially when it's coming to college athletics. These kids are pay for play. They can say what they want to people that hate Caitlin Clark when she was at Iowa. Do you know how much money Iowa made from Caitlin Clark? Do you know how much money LSU made from Angel Reese? You know how much money South Carolina made from Camila Cardoso? And them winning the national championship? All of that stuff goes hand in hand. It's a domino effect. You got to figure out what you want to do. The problem she might have is, while her motives are admirable, it all goes to the wayside if you not winning, because that's the job at the school. It's not about mentoring kids anymore. Your job is still to win, because when athletes don't want to come to your school to be mentored, that's a bonus. If you go to a school with a good coach that mentors kids and can teach life lessons and win, if you not winning, don't nobody want to go to the school anyways. So they got to be hand in hand. So again, the coaches have a task ahead of them. It is time for college coaches. You must evolve and deal with this NIL landscape that has been set before you. If you don't, it's going to be right back. All of the big schools are getting all of the athletes. Got to figure out a way to do it. There's no way around it. So I'm going to keep watching this, because now the girl done put stuff on her social media. She dropping hints about transferring and all of that kind of stuff. And they got blasted by 50. If this girl decides to transfer and go somewhere else where they're going to let her play and let her do her, or whatever the situation is, she stood her ground. As the coach, she stood her ground. No player is bigger than the game. However, if that athlete leaves and you only get 10 wins on the season, your job is up. You're going to get promoted to fan. It is incumbent upon these coaches to figure out a way to find the balance to deal with these athletes and this NIL money. There's no way around it. No way around it. They must evolve.